making poetry. You have to inhabit poetry if you want to make it. And what's to inhabit? To be in the habit of, to wear words sitting in the plainest light, in the silk of morning, in the shoe of night. A feeling bare and frondish in surprising air, familiar, rare. And what's to make? To be and to become words passing weather, to serve a girl on terrible terms, embark on voyages over voices, evade the ego hill, the misery well, the siren hiss of published success, success. And why inherit poetry? Oh, it's the shared comedy of the worst blessed. The sound leading the hand, a word life running from mind to the washed rooms of the simple senses. One of those haunted, undefendable, unpoetic crosses we have to find. Poem for a daughter. I think I'm going to have it, I said, joking between pains. The midwife rolled competent sleeves over corpulent, milky arms. Dear, you never have it. We deliver it. Our judgment years proved true. Certainly, I've never had you as you still have me, Caroline. Why does a mother need a daughter? Heart's needle, hostage to fortune, freedom's end. Yet nothing's more perfect than that bleating, razor-shaped cry that delivers a mother to her baby. The blood cord snaps that held their sphere together. The child, tiny and alone, creates the mother. A woman's life is her own until it is taken away by a first particular cry. Then she is not alone, but part of the premises of everything there is. A time, a tribe, a war. When we belong to the world, we become what we are. A marriage. When my mother knew why her treatment wasn't working, she said to my father, trying not to detonate her news, "Steve, you must marry again. When I'm gone, who's going to tell you to put your trousers on before your shoes?" My father opened his mouth couldn't refuse. Instead, he threw her a look. A man just shot, gazing at the arm or leg he was about to lose. His cigarette burned him, but he didn't stub it out. Later on the porch, alive in the dark together, how solid the house must have felt, how sanely familiar, the night-lit leaves, their shadows patterning the street. The house is still there, the elms and the people not. It was now, and it never was now. Like every experience of being entirely here, yet really not being. They couldn't imagine the future that I am seeing. For all his philosophy and all her common sense. Arioso Dolente. This is a poem that goes back to my teenage days in Ann Arbor, Michigan, sitting on the porch with my family. It was written after I'd seen a photograph of my family sitting on the front porch. And after I'd been playing the Arioso dolente in Beethoven's Sonata 110, Opus 110. And somehow playing the piano again and remembering how my father had hovered over me while I learned the piano as a teenager that brought about this poem. It's dedicated to my grandchildren when they become grandparents. A mother who read and thought and poured herself into me. She was the jug, and I was the two-eared cup. How she would scorn today's showbiz inanity, democracy twisted, its high ideals sold up. Cancer filched her voice, then cut her throat. Why is it none of the faces in this family snapshot looks upset? A father who ran downstairs as I practiced the piano, barefooted, buttoning his shirt, he shouted, G, D natural, C flat, dolente, arioso, put all the griefs of the world in that change of key. Who then could lay a finger on his sleeve to distress him with, one day, Steve, 2 of your well-taught daughters will be deaf. Mother must be sitting left on the porch set. You can just see her. My sister's on her lap. At that, Steve, confiding to his cigarette something my mother's mother has to laugh at. The screen door twangs, slamming on its sprung hinge. Paint blisters on the steps. Iced tea, grass cuttings, elm flowers, mock orange. A grand June evening like this one, not too buggy, unself-questioning Midwestern. Maybe 1951. And of course, there, in my grandmother's memory, lives just such another summer, 1890 or 91. Though it's not on her mind now, then. No, she's thinking of the yeast ring rising in the oven, or how any shoes irritate her bunion. Paper gestures, pictures, newsprint laughter. And after the camera winks and makes its catch, the decibels drain away forever and ever. No need to say, look to these smilers on the porch. Grandmother will have her stroke, and you, mother, will nurse her. Or to myself, this woman died paralyzed dumb, and that one dumb from cancer. Sufficient unto the day, grandmother, poor and liturgical, whose days were duties, stitches in the tea brown blanket she for years crocheted, its zigzag of yellow wool, her grateful offering, her proof of goodness to present, gift wrapped to our Father in heaven. Accept, O Lord, this best I can make it so. And he, thou good and faithful servant, lose thyself and be whole. Consciousness walks on tiptoe through what happens. So much is felt, so little of it said. But ours is the breath on which the past depends. What happened is what the living teach the dead, who smilingly lost to their lost concerns in grey on grey. Are all of them deaf, blind, unburdened by today? As if our recording selves, our mortal identities could be cupped in a concave universe or lens, ageless at all ages, cleansed of memories, not minding that meaningful genealogy extends no further than the mind's flash images reach back. As for what happens next, let all the griefs of the world find keys for that. The minister. We're going to need the minister to help this heavy body into the ground. But he won't dig the hole. Others who are stronger and weaker will have to do that. And he won't wipe his nose and his eyes. Others who are weaker and stronger will have to do that. And he won't bake cakes or take care of the kids, women's work. Anyway, what would they do at a time like this if they didn't do that? No, we'll get the minister to come and take care of the words. He doesn't have to make them up. He doesn't have to say them well. He doesn't have to like them, so long as they agree to obey him. We have to have the minister so the words will know where to go. Imagine them circling and circling the confusing cemetery. Imagine them roving the earth without anywhere to rest. This next poem is called Beach Kites, and it's very recent, and in recent days I've been writing poems that to me mean more than one thing at once. I mean, poetry does that anyway, metaphorically. But this began being a poem about watching the beach kites on the beach, these huge and enormous kites that is now a kind of new sport of going out to sea, blown by this, carried by the kites. But I began writing it with some idea of talking about evolution and how there is a whole story being told that has nothing to do with humankind. And that is the story of the earth as it unravels and becomes, as it were, more understandable and older and older. And when I finished writing the poem, I suddenly realized I'd also written a poem about writing. And I'm rather concerned that people believe there might be a new way of writing poetry, that you needn't use old models or images to make poems. So this questions whether there is a kind of new way of writing. Beach kites. Is this a new way of being born? To feel some huge crescent personality burgeoning out of your shoulders, winging you over the sand, the sluggish sea? Mile upon mile of contaminated wash is tucking a cold March sky into the horizon. You can drive no further. Look down at the thrashing water, the upfalls of its reach, failing again to take the cliff. Sandpipers hunch on the geomorphic ledge, rock face and wave force, story without speech. But it's one thing to pause at the cutting edge, another to face the evolving beach, the gap where the road stops and the dunes heap, and the wind blows fiercely in the wrong direction. One gaudy comma ascends, another. It's the air, rocking alert with punctuation. Grey sickle cells cluster under a microscope. A jumbo wasp, a pterodactyl, a peacock's feather, jockey for space against moon pairings, rainbow zeppelins, prayer flags, imagination battling with imagination, spotted species chasing the plain. As out they float, strong men steering their wild umbilical toys away from the girlfriends in the car park, who, leathered from heel to neck in steel-studded black, headscarfed against the wind, seem coolly resigned to an old dispensation, a ritual of mating that puts up again with the cliff-hanging habits of boys. Is this a new way of writing? The heroes off flying or fighting, the women waiting? Small philosophical poem. Dr. Animus, whose philosophy is a table, sits down contentedly to a square meal. The plates lie there and there, just where they should lie. His feet stay just where they should stay, between legs and the floor. His eyes believe the clean waxed surfaces are what they are. But while he's eating his unexceptional propositions, his wise wife, Anima, sweeping a haze gold decanter from a metaphysical salver, pours him a small glass of doubt. Just what he needs. He smacks his lips and cracks his knuckles. The world is the pleasure of thought. He'd like to stay awake all night, elbows on the table, talking of how the table might not be there. But Anima, whose philosophy is hunger, perceives the plates are void in empty air. The floor is void beneath his trusting feet. Peeling her glass from its slender cone of fire, she fills the room with love and fear and fear.